Members present. That constitutes a quorum, so the board may continue the business based on majority vote, a quorum being present. I do want to start, as we often do, by reminding that in addition to all these business-like things we do at such meetings, we're reminded every day that the work we do remains vital, and also that it's hard and dangerous. We've just been talking, we'll hear a little bit more about what just happened in Cairo, what just happened in various places. Every day our people are risking intimidation, violence, arrest to gather and report the news, and we want our reporters to know that we as a board, as much as we may discuss other matters that seem less important, we're aware of the sacrifices they make and the value they attach to their work. This update on the threats to BBG journalists is an indication of the challenges that must be met as we continue to battle censorship and champion media freedom. We have two disturbing cases involving journalists like we need to note today. Brian, could you report on the incident in your Cairo offices?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sunday afternoon, as the clashes between the Coptic demonstrators and the military police escalated, Al Hurra's Al-Yom news magazine program was broadcasting live virtually across the street from Maspero, where the demonstrations were taking place. About 8 o'clock local time, in the midst of the on-air broadcast, what appear to be military police stormed into our facility while the show was on the air. I'd like to run about a 4-minute video that captures that. It shows just the anchor. The camera was trained on the anchor the whole time. You don't actually see the military police, but it's interesting to watch his reaction. About 40 seconds into the video, you will hear the cocking of a carbine, the chambering of a round by the military police in front of the anchor. It's hard to miss. And after the video, I can say a few more things. When we enter the video, he is doing a phoner. The anchor is with a guest, and there's a split screen where Al Hurra's camera are showing the demonstration, and Egyptian TV, we picked up their feed too, so we're showing two views of the demonstration, and he's talking with the guest, and then the interruption occurs. So go ahead and roll the video, please.
او ما ترميش حجاره على الناس او ما كانش الموضوع هيتطور انما
طيب يبدو الان دكتور ايهاب لا اعلم ان الامر دكتور ايهاب يوجد الان افراد من الجيش بالفعل دخلوا الاستوديو الان، هم متواجدون. لا نعلم يعني ان كان بالفعل يراد قطع البث ام لا، لكن الجيش الان متواجد. انا على الهواء، افراد من الجيش. انا على الهواء بس يا مصطفى، انا على الهواء انا مصري يا جماعه، انا على الهواء، انا مصري على الهواء، انا مصري. براحتك مصطفى، سيبه يا مصطفى، سيبه يا مين
هو ممكن دي تكون من ضمن خطه
التامين. طيب مصطفى اخرس يا مصطفى، اخرس براحته، سيبوه يدخل. الآن جندي أحد جنود القوات المسلحة الآن موجود داخل المبنى بسلاحه الآلي داخل الاستوديو، وأنا على الهواء. يعني نتمنى على الأمر خير، ربما يكون هناك فقط تعقب لأشخاص أو شباب ربما تواجدوا في المبنى، هم يحاولون إلقاء القبض عليهم. الأمر سوف يحل مشاهدينا، إن شاء الله الأمور تبقى على ما يرام. يعني براحتك اهدى، براحتك خالص، براحتك احنا معاك براحتك خالص، بالراحه دور زي ما انت عايز براحتك خالص. بس طيب الآن يعني يبدو أن الأمر يعني كما قلنا مشاهدينا هو مرشح للتطور. يعني الآن قوات الجيش موجودة الآن في المبنى. هم يبحثوا عن أشخاص ربما يكونوا قد هربوا، ويقولوا بأنهم حصل شيء من الضرب أو الاعتداء على قوات الجيش. يخشوا بأنه أفراد قد يكون خرجوا أو صعدوا إلى الاستوديو الذي نحدثكم منه الآن. عذرا يعني أرجو أن تقدروا ما نحدث به الآن. يعني أنتم تشاهدون الآن هذه الأصوات. أنا معيش أي حد خالص. هناك عدد من الجنود الغاضبين الذين دخلوا المبنى ويفتشوا في كل شيء، يعني ربما في الكنبة التي أمامي يعني، ويبحثوا في كل شيء ربما عن أشخاص ربما يختبئون من هؤلاء الشباب. لكن على أي حال الجيش الآن يحاول بسط سيطرته وبسط القبضة الأمنية على منطقة ماسبيرو لمحاولة لوأد هذه الفتنة ووقف هذه الأعمال التي تحدث الآن. الأمور بالفعل أصبحت الآن في الاستوديو تحت السيطرة، ولا شيء على الإطلاق. الأمور بالفعل مشاهدين الآن تحت السيطرة، وتم على ما أسمع يعني أنه الآن فقط هم يحاولون محاولات فردية من أشخاص أو من جنود فرديين الآن يحاول. دكتور إيهاب، هل تسمع دكتور إيهاب؟
متظاهرين او بعض.
طب عذرا مضطرين نقطع الهواء، عذرا لظروف أمنية هنضطر نقطع الهواء. لظروف أمنية هنقطع الهواء يا جماعة. نعتذر لحضرتك المشاهدين لظروف أمنية. يبدو يعني أننا يعني طيب سيدي رمسيس، يعني ما عذرا أعتذر للجميع. لا أعلم ما الذي يحدث تحديدا، يعني لا أعلم إذا كنت على الهواء أم لا. احنا على الهواء.
It's incredible.
You know, Brian, we read all of you the report you sent us and the report by emails and the whole description of this, but seeing it actually unfold makes it all the more dramatic and makes us understand why we do what we do. And if any other governor, Victor, you want to say something? Or no? All right.
Yeah, no, it was amazing the courage and professionalism that Amr Khalil, the anchor, showed during the middle of that, and to think that they start to pick up the interview again after the military left was amazing. And just to be clear, when the military left, they pulled the plug. So it was an amazing example of the kind of journalists that we have out there. That night when the team that produced that show went downstairs to the street, at least 4 or 5 of the cars had been trashed and burned as part of the riots. So there was a lot of hardship and anxiety going on. This story, the whole story of the demonstration, but also the way we covered it, was the talk of Cairo all week. And we, the next day, Monday, put actually a longer video than that that went on, some of the footage before that was played, up on YouTube on our account, and several other accounts posted on their account the same video. And that within the 3 days it's been up, it's had over 200,000 views. It's also, the video is also on numerous Facebook and websites, the Committee to Protect Journalists, Reporters Without Borders. So in reality, it's probably had in excess of 300,000 views, and that's just in 3 days. It is sort of unique to see a reporter on air when the military come in.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Did this happen to any other broadcasters, or was it just because of the proximity of the studio to the square where this incident occurred?
It probably had a lot to do with the proximity. We were across the street. In the building, there's another channel, sort of a web-based channel called 25, January 25, and they were shut down too, but they were not on live when they came in. One of the reasons this is all hard to verify.
Sure.
One of the reasons we believe they came into our building is they placed the body of the cops that had been killed in the foyer of the building. So they thought this was a cops' headquarters. So that we think
Cops, meaning COPTS.
Yeah, the cops.
Yeah.
We think that's what led them to that doorway. I don't think they knew what they were coming into, and they quickly figured it out. And we were up on about the 10th floor, so they ran all the way up. There were about 4 or 5 military police or whatever they were that came in.
Can I ask a question? How did they get into the building, and is this a security concern?
Yeah, it is. It's a vendor. It's not our building. For the reasons we were trying to establish a legal presence in Cairo so we can have our own building, we have to rely on a vendor who's a very good vendor, but the security was very lacking. And we have been talking to him about improving it. I'm not sure they could have done anything with people coming in with armed guard, with weapons. But yeah, we're a little distressed that it was so easy for them to come in, and there was no warning. I mean, you could tell he didn't know they were coming in until they came in, and it would have taken them 3 or 4 minutes at a minimum to get up the stairs. So we would have.
9 floors.
Yeah, it would have been helpful for them to at least have some notice. So we're looking into it from a security standpoint. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Fortunately, too, we were Twittering at the time when this happened because it was a news event. So we got the video out on Twitter, and we got a lot of social media going. It was the topic of conversation in over 20 blogs, and also these, what they call them, forums in the Middle East, over 60 forums. Our part of it was at play. On Monday morning, there was a mention of the incident in the Washington Post. CBS News Path picked it up. So it's gotten a fair amount of pickup, primarily in the Middle East, but some in this country. So it's an event we don't hope to have happen again, but we were really proud of how well our journalists performed under these stressful situations.
It was amazing.
Libby?
It's just complimenting him.
I know. That's why I wanted you to do it into the mic.
Amazing. I mean,
Because, I mean, we forget while we're here sometimes and we're arguing over the minutes.
composure under that kind of pressure is just so impressive.
Yeah, he was extraordinary.
I thought he did a great job on the air. In fact, I've seen anchors freak it far less when I was
The Minister of Information called him Tuesday and offered him a job.
Oh, really?
The Minister of Information also runs Egyptian TV, Nile TV, and the state apparatus. Yeah, and they offered him a job.
Well, someday we hope he gets to offer the former Minister of Information a job. When
He
his tables
respectfully
will
declined.
turn.
I mean, he's still alive.
I'm sorry. Further questions or comments to Brian or compliments? Great. And Steve, I know you have a reporter who was sentenced to 5 years in prison at Turkmenistan, right?
I do. I don't have a video because our guy is in prison. But a stringer who works for us in our Turkmen service in Turkmenistan, his name is Dovlay Murat Yazkuleyev, was detained on September 27th. And on October 5th, in a one-day sham trial in which he was not permitted to have a lawyer, he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for the alleged crime of influencing and abetting an attempted suicide by a family member. His family members claim that that's completely false and that it was a pretext for to try to silence his reporting. They were forced by secret police to write complaints against them, which they have since renounced. The day before he was arrested, Yazkuleyev recorded an audio statement in which he said, "I believe it was done because of my work for Radio Liberty." He was, as I said, tried in a one-day sham trial with no counsel, convicted. He has a right to appeal within 10 days, but as a requirement of the appeal, he has to have a transcript of the trial, which he doesn't have and is not going to be provided for, and he has to have a Turkmen lawyer. We offered to get him an international lawyer, which he doesn't have and cannot find anybody willing to represent him. So his situation is dire, and I know that today 4 U.S. senators wrote to the Turkmen ambassador to register their disapproval and complaint and urge his release, and we hope that sometime in the near future he will be released from jail.
Victor.
I think I know the answer, but just for the record, our ambassador in Turkmenistan, the American ambassador, has he has the embassy there filed formal protests?
I don't know. I haven't heard that they have.
Lynn, do you have any?
Said I thought I knew. I would have thought the answer had been yes, but I didn't hear it. Well, I would just encourage, as RFE may be doing, that obviously you maintain close contact with the embassy there in Turkmenistan.
We've been working daily with the State Department here in Washington,
Right.
where
Well,
they have in turn talked directly.
Like I said before, having embassies on the ground sometimes are not always as connected to the state back here in Washington as we would hope. And it's sometimes good to contact directly the chief of mission. That's a country we unfortunately went 4.5 years with no ambassador. And so the current ambassador has only been there a few months. But I'm sure, like our ambassador in Syria, who has also been braving bullets and attacks because the Syrian government is not providing him the normal security that would be provided, would be a logical person. I'm under no illusions that his protests are going to get the gentleman freed, but it's important to have everyone singing off the same song sheet and doing everything they can in that country. And certainly our heartfelt sympathies should go out and applaud RFE and you and management for all you're doing to do this. I don't know if it's appropriate in what we do, but anytime we can provide the funding for his legal help, since he's in this predicament because he's working for us, us being RFE, we certainly should consider it, in my opinion, and do everything we can. Maybe we're already doing it, I don't know.
We are, and we do traditionally, and we will.
Right.
We do owe him that, but right now we can't get him a lawyer.
Right.
Further questions or comments about it? I mean, I'm both shocked but not surprised that he can't get a lawyer. There's no comment on the legal profession. There's a comment on Turkmenistan. All right. Well, thanks for once again reminding us why we're here, as opposed to everything else. The board held its last meeting in September. The minutes of the board meeting are found behind tab 9. I'll ask if any governors have any amendments they want to make to the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I would just point out on page 5, under revision of grant agreements, it does not reflect how the board occurred. As you may recall, I dissented, and it, as is normal procedure, should indicate the minutes should reflect who voted in behalf of the resolution and who voted against it. Here, it does not include that. Secondly, it refers to an amendment which was made, but it does not contain the text of the amendment, which under normal procedure should occur. I'm happy to approve the minutes, but I think those two corrections should be made, and vote of every governor, however it may fall, should be reflected.
That's a nice way to put it. And do I have unanimous consent for the technical and substantive amendments that Victor wants in the minutes? I see. I'm sorry. I do have.
Mr. Chairman, one comment that it says that I was not in attendance, which I wasn't, but we did join by phone for some key votes, just so that that's.
Yeah.
clear.
In fact, I think that that should also be reflected in the minutes.
Did what? I didn't hear what.
That she was on there by
Called in
phone
for
for the
votes.
votes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that should be reflected. So, assuming we can all agree that those technical amendments can be made, and is there a nodding by the people
I just
taking the
wanna make
minutes?
sure our deputy
Paul?
legal counsel. Paul,
Yeah.
you heard that.
Paul, and can you think those amendments can be made?
Sure.
And, all right. With those amendments helpfully offered, are there any other amendments to the minutes?
I move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. No opposed, sorry. Don't record me as voting against the minutes. I'm now flustered about minutes votes, which I'm apparently not very good at.
It's a very sexy subject.
I know. Well, I keep getting excited about our prisoners in Turkmenistan, and I forget the excitement that minutes can cause. The board, in its preliminary briefings, generally agreed that we would revise the 2011 meeting schedule. I will read for the minutes and make the proposal myself of what we have, I think, agreed to, which is that we will meet on November 18th at the Cohen Building, and that we will not meet in person in December unless we change our minds and feel we have to, but we will likely hold a telephonic meeting if needed.
I second the motion.
Any objections? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Perfect.
Oh, no, I should mention, RFA in November is having their potluck luncheon.
Whoops.
Oh, if I could mention, it is our 15th
Is that
anniversary.
Thursday or Friday? I don't know.
And we would like to do a huge potluck, not just our usual huge
Wait. It cannot be bigger
It's
than
gonna
last
be
year. There was
bigger.
a
It's gonna be
goat
bigger.
that came in, right?
It was a
roasted
sheep.
by
It was a sheep.
It came in, but it didn't go out.
It was a
Was the goat captured on site?
So
It was
we
captured
would,
in the minutes.
and roasted and eaten. So we would like to ask that we could hold that event on the 17th of November before the board meeting, because we're hoping that you'll be in town. We will invite.
17th of November.
Is that no good?
All right. My
I'm happy to
family,
do the
it's a
18th.
family thing in New Orleans on the 17th of November.
Happy to do the 18th. Why don't you have your board meeting at RFA and we can do it on the 18th?
Can I, sorry? Can I don't think we need to decide on TV based on sheeps and goats and everything else, but I will, refer that to your good judgment, Dick's good judgment, where we should hold the meeting. I'd ask leave of the board to let them decide whether it'd be better to move it to RFA.
But in the district.
Well, unless we move RFA out of the district. But yeah, I'm happy with all of that, and especially, I know there are a couple people who can be away, but I think that's really cool. I really appreciated it last year, even if I did get my farm animals
The
mixed up.
staff really want to show off for their 15th anniversary.
I don't know how it can be bigger, by the way.
It's going to be bigger.
I'm all in. If we can just have a general motion that we leave it to the management and chair to figure out the time and place. I mean, the place of it. And if we can't, then you can throw it on the 17th, and people who are here can come. But we will try to work this out. I also the board would like to ask the governance committee to make recommendations to the full board about the 2012 meeting schedule. Do I hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Have I done all this right, Paul?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Steve Korn.
Mr. Chairman, can I just amend my answer to the governor about the U.S. Embassy? I'm informed that the U.S. Embassy in Ashgabat, including the DCM and the ambassador, is fully briefed and aware and supportive, but has no regular access to the Turkmen officials. They passed the case to the U.S. ambassador to the OSCE to raise with the Turkmen ambassador in Vienna. That's the highest level USG contact that's occurred. Lower-level embassy officials have expressed interest in meeting with Yazakulev's family members, who have declined, correctly in my view, for security reasons.
Good. And I'm glad that's being broadcast
So
around the
am I.
world so that everybody knows that. This is the conclusion of what has been a year-long strategic review. I want to first of all start by thanking Anders Winbush, Michael Meehan, but really the whole board, which almost every meeting, both at the formal board meetings, at the briefings, and at the committee and budget and strategy meetings, went step by step through a really important review and strategy process. This is a 5-year plan. It is not a plan that says this is what we're going to do this year. I know some of you may find it hard to believe that government can actually plan in 5-year installments, but I think it's important to be able to do this. And we've listened to our public at our public board meetings. We've had public hearings on this. And now we're bringing together these into an integrated plan and a statement. Details are going to follow in separate communications from Dick Lobo and his management team. There are also going to be open forums for employees to learn more about and discuss the plan across the agency. There's also going to be a new strategy website for employees and the public alike. I think we might try to set a record for openness, discussion, the fact that for a year we've done this in a pretty open process, and within the limits of the law, been as open even about budget and other things, and that we will share all of this on the website. We're calling this new plan Impact Through Innovation and Integration. In response to the world we live in now, it's a growth strategy as well as a fiscal strategy. We're facing enormous amounts of budget constraints, but our mission has become much more important than it's ever been. And so we have to sort of square that circle. So we want to grow our business, we want to grow our audience, and we want to do it in a way that's really smart and get our house in order. We've already done, thanks to Dick and Jeff Trimble, some of the streamlining that it takes, so that there used to be separate IBB and BBG staffs. In our own shop, we're streamlining, so those have been consolidated and duplication has been eliminated. Throughout, we're going step by step in a smart way so that a international broadcasting structure that was built up over 60 years in various increments can now be streamlined and consolidated. Our news outlets, Voice of America, Radio for Europe, Radio Liberty, Al-Hur TV, Radio Sawa, Radio Free Asia, Radio and TV Marta, they're all vital, cost-effective national security assets. 166 million people around the globe on a weekly basis access this information, which is really critical to U.S. security interests. But as critical as our work is, retaining and increasing our audiences and our impact will not be easy, both because of the intense competition from traditional media outlets and expanding digital and social media alternatives. On the flip side of that, those are both actually positive things. It is good for there to be many voices. It's good for there to be 420 channels in the Middle East now instead of one state-owned channel in each place. So even though we're competing in a much more crowded media environment, we love the fact that a free flow of ideas and a free competition of ideas, we think, serves the mission not only of international broadcasting, but the 250, 300-year-old mission of our country itself. Also, the expanding digital and social media are exactly what the founders of Voice of America would have invented if they could have invented something that would further our mission. We've got to navigate this new global information environment. I think Michael Linton earlier today said that the advent of digital media means that the old silo structures are not only inefficient, but they make absolutely no sense. In fact, you might want to express it the way you did, because it was much better.
Well, it's just when we look back at the media landscape 20, 30 years ago in the analog world, we had to build up separate, and you see this in all facets of media, separate integrated infrastructures because you couldn't readily share back office or share even information back and forth. Now that we are fully integrated into a digital platform, it not only no longer necessitates those integrated structures throughout networks, but it also suggests that you can grow and become much more flexible if you start to integrate those structures, and that's part of the hope here.
Mm-hmm. And that's at the core of our plan, including also going on the offensive and developing new means of countering Internet blocking, other forms of censorship, something that Governor Meehan has taken the lead on, new delivery technologies for Asia. David Ensor, we talked about this morning some, Voice of America, is finding, even as we face certain cutbacks, we're actually going to be doing more, we hope, by doing television, satellite, very cost-effective ways in China, even as we shift some of the old shortwave resources to Radio Free Asia, which has been doing it so well. Every now and then you read about, they're cutting back this hour of shortwave instead of looking at the whole picture, especially your strategic plan for the future, which is to build up on the opportunities we have for satellite in China and other places, even as Radio Free Asia continues to be at the forefront using all media, including shortwave and including, I think we're going to find out what this is, as ways to get our message out. Innovation needs to be a part of what we do. Governor McHugh has helped take the lead in both digital social networking and digital technology, but everything that falls under the gamut of innovation. I don't know if you have Rob Bowles, I see. I don't know if I see how there's Raina. If we can point them out, if there's something you quickly want to say about how that's part of the strategic plan.
Sure. I was going to give a few remarks about our Innovation Commission, but just to reinforce what Governor Linton said, it is the digital age now, and we're using as many innovative approaches as we can. And to that extent, we've brought in our DigiNatives. They're finally here. We've spoken about them at a lot of board meetings, but Ryan and Rob right behind me, and we're very, very excited about the possibilities to increase our audiences through technology, particularly digital.
Mm-hmm. And really, over 70 years, as I said, we've been able to, for better or worse, and sometimes worse, build up a complex amalgam of broadcast entities, some of them federal government agencies, some contract agencies, some non-federal, different legal administrative frameworks, 59 languages, 83 language services, a 40% overlap in what we do. And we may never eliminate all overlap, but certainly come well down from a 40% overlap. And all these organizations are in different organizational silos and have had increasing coordination in the past year, thanks to Dick Lobo and Jeff Trimble. We'll have increasing coordination as we go to a global newsroom model. But frankly, are still organizational silos that tend sometimes to work against cross-cutting coordination, which is what we have to do in the digital age. Also, the current structure complicates managing resources for the highest impact. It complicates transforming the agency into an integrated network. Even today, we were talking about when it comes to the budget, when we need to surge in Libya, we need to be on a plane from the Defense Department in Libya, we need to do things in Egypt, we need to move in Asia on various new ways of doing things. We need more flexibility because technologies change every week. And both 5-year plans and federal budgets, I won't go into what the federal budget change process is, but we need to break down the stovepipe of the semi-autonomous entities, but still keep the robust brands and the robust excitement that comes from these entities. And so how can we get the best of what comes from a variety of entity while breaking down the sort of semi-autonomy that keeps things from being integrated in a cost-effective way? We hope that the strategy is to have one great organization with multiple brands and multiple players, and that's the overarching strategy. We've begun to move in that direction. We've, as I say, consolidated the management of IBB and BBG. But our new strategy calls for substantial additional restructuring. Talked about it a lot in public meetings, but I'm really stating it here, and we're really affirming it now officially to go forth from this time on. The points are these: to further streamline network management functions. Secondly, to move towards, as feasible as we study it, step by step, a consolidation of the grantee entities into one organization. To that purpose, we know that that is a complicated process. Michael Linton and I have been through AOL Time Warner mergers, everything being consolidated. I think we can announce, right, I'm going to do that. Yeah, you're going to do it, but we have a consultant now we've already started to meet with who's going to tell us, does it make financial sense? What is the cost benefit? What parts of this make sense? What parts of it don't? But the general view is that we are going to look forward to and try to figure out how do we consolidate the entities. We're also going to explore the question of defederalization, one of the issues that has been raised over the years, so that we can be one team, and the question of whether or not it makes sense for some journalists to be federal employees, some journalists not to be federal employees, and what that does to us. We're doing this with an open mind, and this is not because of any ulterior motive other than to further our mission in the best possible way. We will also try to end, as much as possible over the next 5 years, all language duplication of services, overhaul distribution in favor of the media and our audiences prefer. And to be upfront about it, that's a bit of a euphemism for in places where shortwave really works, we're going to go really hard and do shortwave. But in places where shortwave is declining and there's new forms of social media or there's new satellite dishes appearing on the rooftops, we are going to go where the audiences are, and we're going to be platform agnostic. We're going to deploy news gathering and reporting assets closer to the field to drive better local reporting. And we're going to try to create one global news network where we share all that reporting across our various platforms. And I also think, I also know that we favor the repeal of the legislative ban on the domestic dissemination of our programs. It's known as the Smith-Mundt Act. The Smith-Mundt Act may have made sense in the late 1940s when, I don't know who Smith was, I certainly know who Senator Mundt was, felt that they didn't want the government beaming TV programs into our living rooms. In the age of the internet, that is just a really outdated distinction. We'll also look at a whole new organizational entities, brand names, but our brands will remain the public faces for our audience. Our brands sometimes are very local brands. I know Voice of America. How many do you have, David? You can't even
give
count.
an exact number, but it's a great number.
Yeah, a great number of brands, and whether it's on the national level or even the regional or tribal or language level, you use the best brand that fits. But we will figure out also how to have an identity for our organization, but still take our trusted brand names and build on them. Amid the change, let's be clear that the purpose is to position our organization to grow our audiences and to maximize our impact even as budgets are being cut. Our mission remains to support the freedom of the press through accurate, credible news and information, but also to advance freedom of expression through audience engagement and connection. I think that's, you put that in, right? Okay, it comes later. Here it is. Thus, our new mission statement, this was revised thanks to Susan, if you're wondering why I'm stuttering over this. It reads as follows. It's our mission to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy. Going forward, we will aggressively pursue this mission across the Middle East and North Africa and elsewhere as democracy movements seek to emerge. And as David Ensor was pushing us this morning, in China, Iran, North Korea, Afghanistan, the priority areas, also Cuba, and all the places that deny citizens access to independent news and information, and in Africa and elsewhere, not only to provide humanitarian relief, but also to aid democracy formation and development. And in the face of extremist propaganda and hate speech, we will be the voice that stands against them. As we move forward, we're going to pursue smart growth. Our strategic review has identified more than a dozen media initiatives that will enable us to expand the audience. And based on this review, and we're already moving towards it, our audience is growing very fast. And when people question the number that we had come up with as a metric for studying our audience, they said, oh, you're shooting too high. And then we were briefed today about how our audience numbers are growing as people hunger for more news. But it's become the world's leading international news agency by 2016, focused on our mission and our impact. And to give a quantitative performance goal, it's to reach 216 million people in global weekly audience by the end of this 5-year plan. By setting forth these actions and goals, all of us on the board are expressing our fundamental belief that the agency is up to these challenges. We believe we have the people, the creativity, and the resources, if we restructure right and consolidate right, to be the world's leading international news agency, to get those 216 million global audience. Finally, 2 notes about the process. We'll be releasing the strategic review narrative, because it's not just here's what we want to do, but you need a narrative to say how we got there. Those of us who are narrative writers believe that. And that will provide the background to the substance of what we laid out. Secondly, I guess Dick is going to report this. Do you want me to mention it? Am I talking, the Deloitte? Okay, well, you'll brief us on that. And we're going to try to be in regular communication with the public, the Hill, our employees, anybody else, and be open about this process. I'll turn it over to you, Dick, to lead it with you and Bruce to flesh in what I've been asked to say.
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, you said it all. Said it very
I think you
eloquently,
may have
and-
helped me say it all. I'm sorry if I did. Some of these things, people keep handing me things and say this, too, and don't forget this.
I would only just very briefly want to thank everybody in this room, but tens and tens of other people who were part of this strategic review over the last year. It was a monumental undertaking. It consumed lots and lots of time. And I just want to thank everyone for putting that time in. And what we see now, having come together, is the product of all that great work. So I just want to thank everyone for that.
Dick, you want to talk about Deloitte?
Well, sure. Do we need a vote on this? Yeah, we need a vote.
You're going to vote whenever you're
We're
ready.
going to vote, but I think we need discussion of this, if we don't mind.
Sure.
And did I see your hand or saw a hand? Yeah,
Yes.
Michael.
So we're going to vote on the record of decisions.
Mhm.
So can we just?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Just
amendment if you
there's
want,
an
yeah.
amendment that we discussed earlier today that didn't get reflected in the latest version.
Yeah, why don't you read it out loud so it'll be on the record of the minutes, but also we will, I assume, be able to.
So in the
make that
adoption of the
technical
Strategy and
amendment.
Budget Committee report in section 3, small letter D, number 1, fourth bullet, the language says the 3 grantee organizations will consolidate pending due diligence. I recommend that we take the same position as we do about defederalization, that we ask for a study of the feasibility of consolidating and come to the board of whether we should move forward at this time or try to move together all at once.
I think we added a sentence. Where's the sentence that I think we added?
H2, D, letter D, bold number 1.
Got it.
Bullet point number 3, or third bullet point, no number.
Yeah. Yeah, I added the
I'm not
sentence,
a
the
lawyer,
due
but I'm playing
diligence
one
will
here.
include a preliminary look at the short and long-term financial ramifications and other benefits and costs of consolidation. And I think you want to add and properly do that, that we will,
This consultant comes back to us with a study of the feasibility.
yeah,
of
and that
moving
we will act based on the feasibility and wisdom reported in that study.
the same way the fourth
Okay.
bullet points.
Yeah, is that all right to add? Which is, to make sure everybody agrees with it, the board will act in a step-by-step way based on the feasibility and the wisdom reflected in the consultant studies. Is that-
Yeah, feasibility.
I'm sorry, Libby, you were
The agency
not-
will begin a feasibility study. The same exact language on the defederalization. We should apply that to the,
I'm sorry, where
to
is
the
that?
entities. In the point right below it.
In other words, start the whole paragraph with the agency will begin.
There will be a feasibility study.
Okay, there will be a feasibility study to explore this topic, I'll say. All right, yeah, there'll be a feasibility study and the board will act based on the feasibility and wisdom reflected in that study. Is that all right? Somebody read that back to me.
I assume Mr. Comer is keeping,
Mr. Comer, let me say it one more time. At the end of bullet point 3, picking up language from bullet point 4, it should add the sentence, the agency will, maybe say the agency has begun a feasibility study, since we just did that, to explore this topic and will proceed based on the findings of that study. Would you repeat that back to me, please?
well, I'm not going to sign off to vote for something I haven't seen. I mean, the findings may be something I find inadequate and therefore would vote against. I might
Okay.
find the findings to be wonderful and vote
All
for
right,
it.
would you read it back to me so I can now amend it?
As I understand, Governor
Will you read back to
Mead's-
me what I said, Paul?
Yes, the agency I'm a little bit confused because there are two different proposals. You, Mr. Chairman, I believe that you said at the end we would say the agency will begin a feasibility
No, I said
study.
the agency has begun.
The agency has begun a feasibility study and will act on
Feasibility
the
study. And let me say then, and once,
May I make a suggestion?
yes, thank you.
Okay,
I'm gonna
so
stop.
the agency has
Right,
begun a
right,
feasibility study on the wisdom of consolidating the 3 grantee organizations pending due diligence into a single corporate structure.
The agency has begun a feasibility study on the wisdom
Of consolidating the 3 grantee organizations pending due diligence into a single corporate structure, sharing a unified administrative and legal framework, and then keep the rest of the sentence.
So in other words, change the first sentence.
Yes.
Okay. The new first sentence would read, the agency has begun a feasibility study on the wisdom of consolidating the 3 grantee organizations
Pending due diligence.
pending due diligence into a single corporate structure, sharing a unified blah, 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 while retaining the journalist. The due diligence will include a preliminary look at blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
Got it? Sorry, Steve?
I was just going to, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, do you really want the word wisdom? You know, in my experience, the consultants won't come back and give you wisdom, which implies an opinion. They'll give you the facts as they see them.
Yeah, I think wisdom is what we have to add to the process. So let's put feasibility in.
We don't have that much pressure.
Yeah, I mean, let's be open about this, and even an open meeting. We have repeatedly voted that part of the strategy is this consolidation. This is stepping back a bit. I don't want to move too far away from my general preliminary belief that in general, in all areas that we're doing, we should try to streamline and consolidate. I don't think that Michael's suggestion walks us too far away from that, but I do want to say, so that we're clear, we've discussed this for a year, and we generally do believe that there is likely to be strategic merits in consolidation, and we're now looking with due diligence to see the financial and cost benefits of it before we go any further. Is that approximately right? I mean, I know people are worried that we're back, some people may say, well, are you backing away from something for a year you've talked about?
But I think the board has made a decision to hire an outside professional consultant to give us advice about the best way to go forward with that. And I don't want to prejudge the recommendations that they're going to bring to us, and that's why I wanted to have the language reflect that.
Victor?
Well, I think what Mr. Meehan has suggested is very significant. We're spending $1.3 million of taxpayers' dollars to do a study on this. And we don't know what the study's going to come back with. I hope we don't. If we already did, we don't need to be doing it. And I have signed, I want to just make the record clear for myself. I'm, to use your phrase, Mr. Chairman, agnostic on the issue of consolidation. I'm not for it, and I'm not against it. I'm willing to be persuaded that it makes sense to do it, and I'm willing to be persuaded that it's a foolish idea. And I will be vastly influenced by the recommendation. I prefer the word wisdom as opposed to feasibility, because you can come up with about anything that's feasible, but telling me it's feasible doesn't tell me it's a wise, smart move. And that there's something, a path we ought to travel. And these guys at Deloitte are making good money off this, need to come back and, frankly, belly up to the bar and tell us what they think. And if they have trouble telling us what they think, we should pick the wrong firm. Surely to goodness they can tell us.
Governor Ash, can I just qualify one thing, because that $1.3 million is a lot of money, and everybody should be clear what it's for. It's in staged payments. So
Right.
in the first instance, yes, they will come back with a recommendation as to the wisdom of consolidation. If we decide to proceed with consolidation, they will then provide us with a blueprint for how we should consolidate these organizations.
Well,
and so we are permitted to stage the payments or cut those payments off if, for argument's sake, say we decide that consolidation is not a good idea. So we haven't committed $1.3 million
Well,
to this.
and that's correct, and thank you for the
Would you read
clarification.
it back one more time?
But
Paul?
I would say we are spending $275,000
That's fair.
for the first phase 1 through 5 in the contract document.
That's correct.
And then if we decide it's a good idea to go forward, it would come out to 1.3 million at
That's
the end of the
absolutely correct.
process.
Paul, would you read that back to me now?
Sure, as best I can, Mr. Chairman. It should say the agency has begun a feasibility study to explore or a study to explore the feasibility of consolidating the 3 grantees pending due diligence into a single corporate structure, sharing a unified administrative and legal framework while retaining their journalistic missions. And then continuing on, the due diligence will include a preliminary look at the short and long-term financial ramifications and other benefits and costs of consolidation.
Yeah, since feasibility is now in there twice, if you'll take feasibility out from in front of the word study, so that the agency has begun a study, blah, 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 the feasibility. I would take feasibility, since it's a nice, complex word, is better. We will use our wisdom, but they will study the feasibility. And I would like to propose that amendment be made. Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. All right, as amended. Jeff Trimble.
We wanted to make just a further clarification. Mary Jean could probably say it more clearly than I about the contract and what it's for.
Yeah.
The $1.3 million figure for a contract would be the overall total amount for advice on helping implement your strategic plan.
Right.
It's not envisioned that consulting is confined only to the issue of grantee merger, and as
Correct.
Governor Linton correctly said, the upfront figure now is to begin the process of the grantee merger study. But the contract is broader in scope than just the issue of grantee merger.
Thank you. Good point.
Mr. Chairman, since that's been brought up, I think, why don't we just put it out here? I've got the contract in front of me. It's $275,000 for items 1 through 5.
Correct.
And that'll end, and the due date that we hope for in prior discussions, just to be transparent, is we hope it's November 10th. I'm frankly, as an individual, skeptical that the quality study can be done in that brief time, but I'm happy to be proved incorrect in that skepticism. Then, assuming we go forward at $616,000 and change to go forward, there's $150,000 for travel, and there's another $258,000, I assume, to wind it up and do the post-implementation assistance that's on page 5 here of the contract. I should point out again for the record, and the board has moved to correct this by the adoption of Mr. Meehan's amendment, that the contract itself in the plan of services really doesn't, it's an implementation plan. It's not a, is this wise or feasible plan, which that basically we've added on top of the contract, but it's not in the written document. Because Mary Jean has told us if we redo it, it messes up the funding, or at least I think, if I'm quoting you wrong, tell me, but
Well, we had a nice long meeting this morning, all meeting with the consultants, who very much feel that that's part of the scope of work and very much understand that that's the way we're going to go, and let the record reflect that. And let Mary Jean reflect that.
Yeah, I think that's correct. One thing, too, that is when you're looking at an implementation plan, one of the things you do look at is you're going to look at a cost-benefit analysis and those types of things in an implementation plan. And as we get that information, that would be the time when we start looking at those things that the board would be making this decision on whether that is an appropriate way to go. So part of that is, you know, the cost-benefit and the feasibility study is part of the implementation plan, because you can't implement what you can't do. So I think it is within scope.
And I think it's also important to note several governors, and they can all speak for themselves, but certainly Governor Mulhop and Governor Linton referenced this morning that while cost-benefit ratio and cost savings, cost expenditures are important, there are other factors at play, such as hard to identify, hard to quantify, the special niche in the market, the culture that a particular entity may have that only MBN does well in Tunisia. I'm making generic examples. And that's going to be hard to figure out, especially in 3 weeks. But it may take longer than that. I think it ought to take the time necessary, but also keep the pressure on to have a product and not, at the end of my lifetime, but to do it in a reasonable time. And so I think that we're moving in the right direction, but, cost savings by itself is not, speaking only for me, is not sufficient to justify what will be a certain degree of agony and maybe hope and prosperity as well for consolidation. You also have to look at the history. Some of these language services are frankly are many years old. I'm referring to some at VOA, but also RFA may be the new kid on the block, but there's some others that have been around a while, and they've developed areas that we should be cognizant of, not to say they couldn't be improved upon, modified, changed, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in a wild rush to consolidate, streamline, centralize, and have everything looking pretty on a chart.
Well, I think it's important to note, you've mentioned a couple of times about the time frame. And the consultant, I believe, did tell us that they felt they could aim for a month, but they would not hold to that. So if it took longer, that's how much longer it's going to take longer. And the board endorsed that idea. We want it done right. There is no artificial time frame, so I don't want to leave the impression that this has to be done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, whatever. However long it takes to do it right is what we've asked them to do.
Do I hear a motion for adoption of the Strategy and Budget Committee report as amended?
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second? I think I had it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And it is a long process, and thanks for everything. Budget status, Mary Jean.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Governors. I'll start very briefly with fiscal year 2011, which just ended. We had a successful closeout of the fiscal year. We were able to fund all of the major priorities of the agency and the entities, and which had set us in a good position for starting fiscal year 12. At this point in time, we are just working with the IG and the external auditors on our financial audit. As far as fiscal year 12, we started out in a continuing resolution, which allowed us to continue to operate into the new fiscal year. We are on our second continuing resolution already. This latest one goes through November 18th. We're monitoring funds closely during this CR, and we've asked entities to be frugal with their expenditures. But we are working with collaboratively with them to make sure that all the priorities are funded. As far as our full year bill, we do have marks from the House and the Senate. We have a House subcommittee mark and a Senate full committee mark. The summary of the Senate full committee mark is $740 million for our operating account and a capital improvement account of $9.4 million. The House subcommittee mark funding level is $745 million with a $6.9 million capital improvement account. It's significantly less than our request, but a little bit more than our fiscal year 2011 operating level. So, also included in the Senate provisions, where it was a mandate that we notify Congress before making any reductions or increases to broadcast hours previously approved. This includes changes to transmission platforms for shortwave, medium wave, satellite, and television. Included in the Senate bill was $2.5 million for internet circumvention. The House bill included $15 million to be split between internet circumvention and our Afghanistan-Pakistan border region broadcasting. So it's roughly $7.5 million for each. We are keeping close tabs on the appropriations process. We'll keep the board informed and updated as we move along. We'll also be working with committees to make sure that the board's priorities are reflected in the final bill. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Dick, or did you have questions?
No, no questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to the IBB Director's Report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've heard, the agency has retained Deloitte Consulting to do the work that has been described here over the last few minutes. They were chosen over two other firms that had vied for the business, and it was a robust process. The entity heads were involved in interviewing the various teams that were applying for the job, and Deloitte was chosen last week, and they've already begun their work. They will be working with all the entities and the people that are going to be affected by whatever they come up with. And we're fortunate to have Kate from MBN Kate Sullivan working for us as the point person for the agency on this process. So, Kate, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And the results of the annual federal employee survey are in. The BBG has a long, long way to go, but our agency was named one of the two most improved agencies in federal government. So some hopeful news for us on that front. Thank you to everybody that's helping make that possible. And the 2011 Gold Medal Award ceremony was held last month in the Cohen Auditorium. It was done to publicly recognize IBB, BBG, VOA, and OCB employees who made some of the most outstanding contributions to the BBG's mission over the past year. More than 300 nominations were received for the 96 awards that were available. Nominations came from fellow employees as well as supervisors, and panels of peers recommended the winners, who each received a certificate, a medal, and a cash payment. Chairman Isaacson hosted the event along with the IBB director, VOA director Enser, and OCB director Carlos Garcia, and it was just a terrific event. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, let me commend you for the result of the employee survey coming up. It almost had to come up. We were at rock bottom. That's where you got here before we got there. So any improvement's an improvement.
We're still near rock bottom.
That's good. And we didn't come up a whole lot, but any movement is positive.
Thank you.
As long as it's going up. But let me share with you a couple of concerns that I learned yesterday when I visited the English Language Service for Africa and met with 20 plus some odd wonderful people. The surveys, as I understand it, and if I've misstated anything, tell me that I have, but I don't. But contract employees are not included in the survey. And contract employees at VOA, according to Jack Welch, represent 45% of all employees. So at VOA. So if 45% of the employees are not surveyed, that raises the question as to how valid the 67% response of the 55% who responded is. And I don't hold, not blaming you or anybody else for that, but what I am saying is we need to figure out a way to survey contract employees as well as federal employees. There's a legal distinction, but in terms of the morale and in terms of the men and women who produce the product, be it language service for Africa or Creole or Croatian or whatever, figure out a way to include them, because they're generally an unhappy group of people because they don't get the pay raises they are concerned. Secondly, I want to, because I promised her, that Fritzie Depew, an older lady, but not as old as I am, raised the question that federal employees at VOA get to have flu shots here in the building, but contract employees don't, because they're not federal employees. And yet she points out a contract employee who doesn't get her flu shot is just as capable of getting the flu and passing it on to someone else as anyone else is. And couldn't there be some way, and this seems to be a minor thing, but it's often symbolic of how people feel, I hope IBB can work on that to resolve it so anybody in the building, if they want a flu shot, can get it, and there wouldn't be an artificial distinction between federal employees and contract employees. And then finally, I went over and visited, under your offices, the training center, which you're to be commended for the good work that David Milligan, who's a former city council member in College Park, Maryland, runs. And they conduct over 20 courses ranging from broadcast journalism to leadership to effective writing scripts and various other things. And this is an area where I think we could break down some barriers regardless of whether consolidation occurs or doesn't occur. But these courses are not available to the three entities. They're only available to the federal employees here in the building. They said they did work it out to where contract employees can participate in the training, but RFE, RFA, and MBN employees do their training elsewhere. It seems to me if we have empty seats in the classroom, if there were an employee at RFE or RFA, that they ought to be able to attend and participate if they wanted to. And I just raised that to your attention, and I'm sure you're working on it, but I told these good folks I would bring it to your attention in a public setting so they would know, if they're watching or their friends are, that at least it was put before us. And the easiest one to solve, it seemed to me, would be the flu shot issue.
Well, thank you very much. That's very both kind of you, but also generous of you to do the visits and to raise it as you did earlier today, and we appreciate that report. Thank you very much, Victor. Terry Balaz, I think, is going to give us a transmissions report, which, oh, there you are, Terry.
Right here, yes.
And we've had it already to some extent, so if you can, you don't have to do it in full, you can just hit the high points if you want.
I will be very brief, Mr. Chairman and other governors, standing in today for Andre Mendez, who had a medical appointment. But we have had a number of very notable accomplishments in the technology and transmission area just in the past month or so. Just yesterday, we put on the air a new FM transmitter in Benghazi, Libya, which will be broadcasting the Radio Sawa program. We want to get some on-the-ground verification that that's working well, but every indication right now is that it is going very well. We launched late in September a new satellite service to China, which is supporting both RFA and VOA, with a service we call Picture with Audio, which provides a full stereo audio channel with slates of pictures, which could be still pictures or graphics or text and so forth. The significance of this is it's on probably the most popular satellite reaching China right now, and it's not jammed. So we think this has tremendous potential to get the BBG programming into that very vital audience. Also happy to announce that our long sale of our IBB property in Erking, Germany, has finally been concluded, and Andre Mendez actually came with the check in hand yesterday for 4.3 million euros. So we're not just spending money, we're trying to bring it into the coffers here too. And very happy that that concluded so successfully. And one final note on the content management systems. We're moving forward with the consolidation of a shared content management system that will support most of our broadcasters. And Andre will be going on to Prague later this month to help get that organized.
Thank you very much. Let me turn to Susan McHugh, if I may.
Oh, thanks. I'll be brief, too, because I know we've spoken about this a lot. The Innovation Commission, we held our first meeting September 22nd in New York City at Fast Company magazine. It was very well attended. We had social media theorists, news correspondents, a founder of the Personal Democracy Forum, and many other creative and technical experts there. Just to recap, we founded this commission with the implicit idea of having them, these experts, act as an informal advisory council to bring fresh thinking and general ideas to the issues that we face as a federal agency that's in the midst of an innovative transformation, which we've been discussing for the past hour, and also we're a media organization in today's complex communications landscape. So many of them have never been asked about international media before, and they enjoyed the conversation, but I think that we enjoyed the conversation more than they did, hearing how they would tackle our issues. Some of the key points, just a couple of key points actually to share with you from the meeting, are pretty simple and powerful ideas we can apply right now. One participant asked in the conversation, why are we even here at all? Why are we necessary? And we found through this conversation that there were even more reasons for existing as an agency for international broadcasting and media than when we started the conversation. A lot of the participants, they don't think about smart power, but they think about smart content. So we're grabbing a lot of ideas, and we hope to really work with all of the staff here, with Rob, Rina, Paul Marzalak, and others who are up there, to spread these ideas forward and really innovate at this agency. On technology, Clay Shirky, some of you may know of him. He's one of the most respected minds on the topic of social networks. He talked about the creation of email as a key driver of growth on the internet. And he said in the beginning it wasn't of a lot of interest to anyone except researchers. But as soon as people started using email to connect socially, it just exploded. It took off. And we explored that in terms of how it could be applied here with international media in all of our markets and making more social connections. And that's why on the mission, we've added Connect to our mission so that we are thinking, in addition to a traditional top-down approach, and we've talked a lot about bottom-up, but we're also thinking lateral connections, person to person and community to community. Another great idea that emerged was from Andrew Rasige. Am I pronouncing his last? Richet. He told us to stop thinking about those we're communicating with as our audiences. And he said to think of them as partners and networks. And he referred to them as the internet public. That was a new term to us, but it's a shift in thinking here for us as a board and as a federal agency to think of the internet public that we are serving. And again, to think about communicating through lateral networks that participate with us in the development of content. So these are things we see in innovation all over, and we're looking forward to applying them here. They're just some small examples of some big ideas that we discussed, and we're going to keep working together on to bring these fresh perspectives and forward-leaning ideas into what we do at this very critical agency. So we're excited, and we're moving forward. We've got 23 members right now from many different segments of society. Anne Marie Slaughter is our newest member. She's a former policy director at the State Department. I'll supply a full list of members for the minutes or for the record, and look forward to sharing with you all of the ideas that are put out there and the ideas that we hope to act on. Thank you. And special thanks to Rina Kumra and Rob Bowles for executing. There you go.
Yeah. Bravo. Great. It's nice to have a growth part of our mission there. Carlos Garcia, you want to start off amongst the people giving reports from the entities?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
A lot of things going on in Cuba. We have double the arrests that we had last year, not because the government is more aggressive, just because the people are starting to go out on the street and protest, not only because of the politics, but because of the lack of electricity, water, food, what have you. So a lot of activity going on the island. I don't want to take much time. I like the Connect part of the mission. The Martis are connecting folks within the island through different social media platforms and also outside the island. So I brought little presentation so that we can share with all the board and the public. So if they can roll the tape, as they used to say.
Hello, I am Vanessa Ruiz, host of Television Marti's new program, 7:30, and I am excited to talk about the new media initiatives from the Office of Cuba Broadcasting. Our numbers simply continue to grow as we reach out to the people of Cuba, especially among the younger audience. In the month of September, MartiNoticias.com had over 133,000 visitors and over 325,000 page views. Every week, we send out 24,000 text messages to mobile phones on the island. El Pitirre, a weekly newsletter, goes out to 150,000 emails a week. Circumventing online censorship, we've established and promoted various Sci-Fi nodes to help internet users find news and information. Marti is also sharing content through social media initiatives, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We've successfully incorporated new media into our television and radio programming. Avanza Cuba, especially the ever-growing presence of social media in Cuba, broke new ground establishing communication between bloggers in the island like Yoani Sanchez and writers, journalists, and university students outside the island. Broadcast live on Radio Martí and later on television, Avanza Cuba was another success story for Martí.
Se está reportando también el accionar de la gente en la calle.
Con miles de dificultades dentro de Cuba.
On our weekly news and review show, 7 en 30, which I am proud to host, we've created a segment spotlighting the growth of social media on the island.
De inmediato le vamos a presentar cómo se ha movido la red esta semana.
Using new media to break through repression, isolation, and exposing Cubans to the world around them free from censorship. Promoting the ideals of freedom and democracy. This is Martí.
That's our report, Mr. Chairman.
That's great. And actually, there are a couple things you told us this morning about different ways you're getting things in. I think that'd be cool to say.
Sure.
We don't want to be too public about it.
Well, right. We're it's been in the newspaper. We're very active on our text messaging, and we've actually have established a lot of connectivity with our internet partners. I learned very, very fast, Governor McHugh. That's been very successful. We've also seen that we get participation from the recipients from the text messages into our radio programs, and we want to increment our activities in Facebook and Twitter. Twitter is really taking off for some of us, for some of the shows, and more important, the siphon notes that we use, Mr. Chairman. We're getting approximately from 200 to 250 hits on the siphon notes from Cuba. When we first started at the Martís, we were getting 400 hits on the internet site. The internet site gets over 5,000 hits a day. The siphon notes continue to grow. We promote those through radio, TV, and all the other platforms that we have. So a lot of good things happening in terms of delivering the news to our internet and partners in our audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Ensor, Voice of America.
Mr. Chairman, Voice of America marked the 10th anniversary last month of the 9/11 attacks with a multimedia strategy that ranged from live reports from Ground Zero to an interactive history of detention at Guantanamo Bay. All kinds of different presentations were done. One of our most successful ones used social media tools to engage young people around the world. It was called What's Your 9/11? And it asked people to share with us the single event that most shaped their lives, just as September 11th shaped so many Americans' lives. Jessica Stahl is just going to give you a minute or two on the project and show you what we got back from people. Jessica.
Great, thanks. So I don't have flashy music like the Martí video, but hopefully we will have visual up there as soon as they can pull it up. So for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we wanted to do something that would really engage our young audience around the world and make this relevant for them, make it real. We started from the premise that for young Americans, 9/11 was a defining moment. You sort of heard people throwing around this term, the 9/11 generation. But we wanted to recognize that for our audience, everyone has had their own 9/11. Everyone has had this moment that shaped their lives and shaped the way that they see the world. And so when we talk about what defines a generation, we're really talking about this much wider range of events. So we asked people around the world to tell us, what's your 9/11? To give us a story of the event that most shaped their life and shaped where they see themselves in the world. And the result is this website that you see here, whatsyour911.com. And it was really an incredible look at all the events that are shaping young lives around the world. We collected stories, as you can see, in video, audio, text format. We have a couple of tweets. And we had a bunch of different methods for people to submit their stories to us. We collected video and audio using YouTube, SoundCloud. We allowed people to record their video straight to Facebook, record an audio clip straight to a Skype voicemail account. But another thing we did that was really important was we integrated this social media project with traditional media and with VOA broadcast programming, not just in English, but across the entire house. So we worked with VOA shows to create programming and segments around this What's Your 9/11 concept. And so what we were able to do was give them the material that we were receiving to our website for them to use in their show. And they were able to put out a call to their audience to get content back, which then fed back into the website and enriched the content that we were having here. And so I'll let you look at this timeline. We plotted all the events that we received, or all the stories that we received on a timeline. By September 11th, we had received 50 stories coming in from every continent around the world, except Antarctica. Someday we will crack Antarctica. Of course, tied to the 9/11 anniversary, you can see a lot of the stories were about 9/11, but coming from a wide range of different perspectives. So we had Americans, we had Muslim Americans, Pakistanis, Afghans, international students who had been in the U.S. at the time of the attacks. So really a broad range of different perspectives on how this event impacted people's lives. But you can also see we got a wide range of other events, ranging all the way from the Salvadoran Civil War in 1992, all the way through this last one, the Malawi protests. There were deadly protests just this past summer in Malawi, this past July. And so in essence, we ended up achieving exactly what we set out to build, this sort of living archive of the events that are defining the next generation of world leaders and how they're going to see the world that they end up running. And we also accomplished something more important to us as VOA, which was an approach to the 9/11 anniversary that really resonated with our audience, many of whom didn't experience the 9/11 attack. So this is a way to bring it home to them and make it real. They did connect to this project. It was shared over 1,000 times on Facebook, had a lot of interaction on Tumblr, which is where this was hosted, and generated a lot of conversations. So we saw people not only sharing their story with us, but talking to each other and learning about other people's experiences through the lens of their own. And so I would encourage you, when this meeting's over, I know it's running a bit long, but if you have time, go to whatsyour911.com and check out some of the stories. That's whatsyour911.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Any questions? David, more?
Well, just to say that in conversation with a couple of young Afghans a few weeks ago, we talked about this, and they're debating still what to put up, what to offer to the website, because they said Afghanistan's had quite a few 9/11s. But it really got people talking, especially younger people. So we're very, very pleased with this effort by our young,
That's such an
very
interesting
talented
line
team.
that Afghanistan has quite a few 9/11s. Really interesting conceptually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Horn, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk today about impact. I'm told that a few months before I started at Radio Free Europe, we had a visit from a congressional delegation in our Prague headquarters. And one of the freshly minted new congressmen wanted to know what the return on investment was from Radio Free Europe. He wanted to know what the ROI was, as if RFERL was a piece of equipment that you put in a factory to try to improve your productivity. But there is no ROI in the narrow sense of the accounting sense of the word from RFERL. And what we have to look at is the impact, as our new strategic study points out, the impact we have on the societies in which we broadcast. And there's an infinite number of examples I could use, but today I just want to touch on three. In Uzbekistan, we have a cadre of hundreds of citizen journalists who are ready at the drop of a hat to communicate with us about what's going on there. Recently, there were two female journalists who worked at a television station in Uzbekistan who wanted to go on a hunger strike to protest censorship in their television station. And they were denied permission, as you might guess, to do that at their workplace. They were denied permission to do it in public because they didn't have a license to protest. So they went to the apartment of one of the women, and we hooked up with them, and using Twitter, communicated their virtual hunger strike to their fellow citizens and to the world. And they engaged directly in conversations with people all over their country and the world about their quest to end censorship in Uzbekistan. And so we sort of changed the game and allowed a free expression of this idea to go on in Uzbekistan. Recently, we had a visit from the Iraqi Foreign Minister, Zabari, who came to Prague and wanted to meet specifically with the people from Radio Free Iraq. And he surprised everybody by knowing who everybody was, knowing their programs inside out. He clearly listened regularly. And he informed us that he and all of his fellow cabinet members regularly debate and talk about the issues that they hear on Radio Free Iraq, and that they value it, especially because they know that it's objective and comprehensive. So they're really making an impact directly on the Iraqi cabinet. And during a recent visit, I had the honor of meeting a man from Azerbaijan whose name is Inula Fataleyev, and his new bride, who were on their honeymoon. And I want to tell you about this man. He's amazing. He's a well-known Azeri journalist and blogger. In 2007, he was tried and convicted on trumped-up charges of terrorism, defamation, and incitement to racial hatred. The charges were widely denounced by international organizations and multiple governments as politically motivated, but nevertheless, he was convicted and sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. Our Azeri service, Radio Azalik, played a key role in shedding light on his circumstances. We reported extensively on his arrest and trials. We interviewed him in prison and aired several of his letters that he wrote from prison. And he was recently released. In a post-release interview, he said, "I love Radio Azalik. You're one of the ones who saved my life." I asked him when I met with him, I said, "Are you going to go back to Azerbaijan?" And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, "Of course. This is what I do. This is who I am. I have to go back." And next month, he will travel to New York, where he's going to receive the World Press Freedom Award, which was awarded to him in 2009, but he couldn't pick up because he was in prison. So this is the kind of impact we are able to have on the world.
Isn't that the gentleman I met with in Baku who sent the chairman a letter?
I don't know if you met with him or not.
He'd just been released.
If he was just released, you probably did.
Ambassador Braza set up the meeting, and he wrote a letter, which at the last meeting or two meetings, I forget which, addressed to our chairman, and it's great they've let him out. He's obviously at risk, and that's a government that might very well lock him up again.
Yeah. He's absolutely fearless.
Great. Libby, Radio Free Asia, please. Libby Liu.
Okay, I'll be brief, and I'll keep it down to 3. And I'll start with what you have in front of you. Speaking of brave, we hooked up with this documentary crew that had worked with the National Geographic. It's very hard because the cord is short, and so am I. What you have before you is the Mekong River series, which they produced for us from the mouth of the river in Tibet all the way through all the countries it runs in, and doing stories along the way. This won first place at the Society of Environmental Journalists last year. I mean, it's remarkable, and I commend that to you. They have been now in the field for months doing a series on human trafficking or modern slavery. We have not been able to talk about it or publish any of their product because of the extreme danger that they have been in. So on your USB drive credit card, you have parts 1 and 2 loaded on. In the back, you'll see our QR block, which you can read with your smartphone, and it'll take you right to RFA. And if you don't want the games or the shows, you're free to erase it and use it as your USB drive. You can keep it in your wallets. But the unbelievable thing about this crew is, they have been covering horrible news all over the world in very dangerous situations, and they themselves are stunned by the systematic slavery and cruelty being done to the North Korean refugee women. So it's really powerful if you can stun this group of people. So that's one. Secondly, last month I talked about the situation in Burma. Everybody is totally perplexed about what's going on with Burma. They're obviously trying to put their best foot forward. 8 days ago, we had an exclusive interview with the head of information in Burma, and we broke his story about wanting to end press censorship in Burma. So he is now on the forefront of saying that he no longer wants to have no free press in Burma, and we very much look forward to seeing how that holds up. Of course, AP and everybody picked it up, but we can't really figure out how that's going over there. We'd like to see one country decide it's not going to have press restrictions anymore. So I hope that spreads around some more. The third thing that I was going to talk about, I'm just going to skip and hope that you read our report and leave it at that.
Okay, questions, comments? Brian, you've been on the firing line. Go for it.
I'll just allow my earlier comments to stand as my report.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it was for those.
I can't top that.
Actually, you can. Actually, there are a few people. I mean, just you really have had a brave anchor in Cairo, and we sure appreciate that. So, thank you very much.
I'll pass it along to him.
I have an event announcement.
Susan McHugh has an event announcement.
I forgot to mention, for those of you who aren't familiar with something called PopTech, it's sort of a younger person's version of TED. Are you familiar with Maine? Every year.
I'm having a fight with them today, but go ahead.
The PopTech folks? Parazit.
Posted something on it.
Well, this year, Parazit, our very own Parazit, will be presenting at PopTech, which is a big deal. So we are going through Ryan and Rob's leadership and others here. We're going to live stream it here Friday the 21st in the auditorium. So we're encouraging as many to go and attend, and we're going to have speakers from all the different networks also here on stage speaking, and then of course we'll watch Parazit present to PopTech up in Maine. But there's a ton of energy around this, and this is just a great way to spread the word about what we're doing.
We have left it to the wisdom of Dick and Jeff to figure out what we're going to eat and where we're going to eat it on November 18th, our next meeting. We will also, by then, have digested a consultant's report that will talk about feasibility, if not wisdom, and we will apply wisdom to it. Until then, I wish you all very well, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.